Hi everyone, I'm going to walk you through the next steps on your quantitative data page. Earlier in the week or last week, I had wanted you to create the data table section of this. So again, if you've done that already, terrific. And if you haven't, you'll want to go to a previous video that I posted. For both parts, you'll be accessing this quantitative data link in Schoology, which will lead you right here. So this should look familiar to you if you have already done the data tables. You've walked through this first step of typing in the names of your planets here and then finding the appropriate data comparisons, which you located in this tab right here. You've put in your data comparison 1 right here, and then you've typed in your data comparison 2, which was on this row right here, or column. You've typed those in here. Before you actually make the graph, because that's the next step, I want to ask, have you also included the units for each one of your comparisons? Okay, so if you had done mass, for example, you have to the 24th kilogram, or maybe it was to the 20th kilogram. If you had done something that had to do with velocity, you had kilometers per second, or maybe meters per second in parentheses. If you're thinking, I forgot, I didn't do that, where do I go to access it? For all of your specific numbers, data, you're going to click this solar system object data link right here. That's going to lead you to this. If you're curious, I didn't get the units, what was it? It is these amounts in parentheses. I'm just throwing this out there in case you had done a unit that has an exponent in it. For example, kilograms per meter cubed. Let's say, if I want to type in a cube on here, how do I put that in here? Because you actually can't do that on Google Sheets. So to do that, let's say if this one was actually density and I did kg/m3. Okay, I can't get that 3 in an exponent form. So what I did down below is I included some units that you can copy and paste. So if I click into this and I copy that 3, I go back up here, I paste, Control V, close parentheses. That's all I got to do. In case you need a different exponent. Just don't delete that little cell right there, else you lose all of it. Again, Control Z if you make any mistakes on here. Hey, so now to actually make the graphs, and before we make the graph, what you may have run into, especially if you're doing mass, I want to double check that you didn't actually write out the entire number 10 to the 24th power. Okay, my make-believe planets here, Zorro and Xena, planet Zorro isn't actually 4.9 kilograms. Would be pretty silly for a planet to weigh as much as just a few books. Okay, that number is actually to the 24th power. But what I'm hoping you didn't do is actually include all of those zeros, so that would actually be 23 zeros. So your number isn't like this. That's going to look really silly on a graph. So it's simply the numbers that you see in these columns. Okay? The unit's going to do the work for us if it was a really big exponent. Let's say, for example, I ran into this the other day with a student. For example, if you had done planet Venus versus, what if it was like one of these other planets that had a different mass exponent, like to the 20th power? Or maybe you had compared it to one of these, like Titan or something like that. Titan was a popular moon, which is to the 18th power. Which exponent should you use? We'll have to change it. So my recommendation, let's say if you had done Titan, or maybe the moon. Let's do the moon versus Venus. I would use the exponent that's smaller, like to the 18th. Or let's say if you had done Venus versus Pluto, I would use to the 20th power. Reason being, it'll kind of make our graph a little bit more comparable. It'll look better. So let's say if you had done Pluto versus Venus. We're not going to use to the 24th. We're going to go to the 20th. You're like, okay, what do I do? You'll have to change the exponent or the decimal point spot for Venus, since we're going to do it instead to the 20th power. So on here, let's pretend if I was doing Venus and Pluto. First change my exponent. I'm going to put a 0, copy. So I have a unit change, that's good. I can put in Pluto's mass, which was 131 times 10 to the 20th. So I'm just going to put 131. I got to switch up Venus. So how will that look? All I got to do is move this number or move this decimal point right here. So that's 4.87. So let me show you what this would end up looking like. So this 4.87. And now since it's going to be the 20th, I have to move the decimal point 4 places to the right. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my new number. So instead of 4.87, I'm going to put 48,700 in that box instead. Okay, so I'm going to close out of this thing. You're not including commas. Don't put commas in these boxes or else the sheet won't compute. Okay, so we can even see right now the size and mass difference between Venus and Pluto, but we have them both to the 20th power. Hope that makes sense. If you have different combinations of masses, you don't know how to do it, just shoot me a message. I'll help you out. Okay, thanks everyone else who was waiting from before. Okay, to make your graphs, first step, you're going to want to click and highlight the Your Objects box all the way through to the bottom box here. So essentially what's in gray, you're not going to highlight the data comparison box here. Next step, click Insert, Chart. And what you should see right away, make my screen a little smaller here, is a double bar graph. Okay, that shows mass or whatever your comparison is. So for me, I have mass that's in blue, escape velocity. So remember, that's how fast I would have to travel in a craft to escape the planet's gravitational clutches. And so right now, everything's read off of this axis here. But we're not done with it just yet. We got to customize this, make it look pretty, make it look legible and readable for me, the reader. So we're going to keep it as a column chart. Don't mess with that. You're going to click Next, Customize. And again, all throughout this, if I'm ever going too fast, just pause the video. Click Customize. Then we're going to start with Series. First thing we're going to do is you're going to want to select whichever one's blue. Click the blue one. And then we want to make sure, and it should be already, we're going to keep the mass red along the left axis. So we're going to keep this as is. Scroll down a little bit. We want to turn on the data label option, because then what you'll see pop up is the specific number that bar is being read at. Okay, so it's easily enough for me. I can tell that the mass of planet Xena is below 1 times 10 to the 24th kilogram. Okay, so blue is good to go. Then go back up to Apply All Series and click Escape Velocity, or whatever the red is. Click your red option. We're going to assign that to the right axis. So what that does is it spreads out our data a little bit more. Again, same thing. You're going to scroll down. You're going to turn on data labels. And so I would want you to pause right now and ask yourself, okay, what is my graph showing me? What's the relationship between the data sets that I'm comparing, whether it's mass, escape velocity, or mass and distance from the sun? Sometimes you may recognize a relationship between the two. So the reason I picked mass and escape velocity is there's a definite relationship between these. Whereas if you had picked mass versus distance from the sun, that may not show a direct relationship, especially if your planets are of differing sizes. Okay, so my goal for you, now there didn't have to be a relationship shown, but maybe there is. So for me, what I'm looking at is my mass. I read this along the left axis, and I know that planet Zorro is almost 5 times 10 to the 24th kilogram. Its escape velocity, given its mass, is quite a bit higher than Xena's, because Xena has a very low mass planet compared to Zorro. So there's a definite relationship between mass and escape velocity. So you're lucky if that was maybe your combination. I'm giving you a big assist right there. So the main edits I wanted you to do to your graph are good to go. You might be thinking, well, we need a graph title. Yeah, you're right. We do need a graph title. So go back up to chart and axis titles, and you can type in chart title right here. Again, it shouldn't just be, if you're doing a similar combination to me, mass graph, planet graph, data comparison graph, solar system graph. Again, those are all very vague. Think of, you're writing a short story right now in your ELA classes, or you're thinking about it. I would want your title to be descriptive and give an idea of what your reader's looking at. So since we are comparing things, you can go off of what I'm writing here because it's good practice. Comparing the mass and escape velocity of, you're thinking, oh, I need to put in the planet names or the moon names. Yes, you're right. It shouldn't just end right here. Of Zorro and Xena. Here are the things that I want you to look at with my title. And it's a common mistake that I see in 8th grade work. Do not lowercase, like especially the first part right here. And notice I've capitalized the main words. That's exactly how yours should look too. You don't have to capitalize like our little conjunction words like and, or, the, of. Capitalize the main letters of the words. You can also do some edits. You can change up the font of that, which is, I think it's kind of fun a little bit if you want to do that. You can change the color of the title, but it shouldn't be any, gaudy, really bright, difficult to read fonts. Remember, your teacher is older here. My eyes are not quite as sharp as yours. Just kidding. I have 20/20 vision when corrected. You can change around the font size. Like I want to fit all this on one line, so I'm going to shrink that a little bit. Not that small. Make it manageable. I centered it on there too. You can italicize it or bold it if you want to. Again, just make it look nice. Make it look visually appealing. You can also change the color of the data bars. For that, you go back to series, I believe. Oh yeah, color. Again, nothing super gaudy. I kind of like that purple-green combination. So if I did kind of like a purple here, then to change the other bar, I got to go back to that series. If I did like a dark green. I don't like that one. Ooh, I like that. That's a little bit better. You can also make it look, where was it? You can make the bars look three-dimensional. I forget where that was. Again, yeah, play around with it a little bit. You can if you want to. You don't have to have like a trend line or anything like that. Let's go back to chart. Where was that? Anyway, so you can continue to customize this as long as it shows the title. You have these data labels on it. And I know sometimes if you have especially if you're doing mass, if you have a really big and a really small planet, sometimes the data bars may not even be visible, which is why it's important to have the data label on so I know what the number is. So you get X out of this, and what you'd want to do is you'll just kind of drag this off to the side. That's one of yours is ready to go. Then do the same thing, highlight your second data series, insert chart, and then go through the same steps that I outlined. And feel free to customize this. You can change the colors of the labels, the horizontal axes, all sorts of stuff. So it shouldn't just be, if you were to insert a graph that just looked like this, that would not be acceptable. Not acceptable. Go through the same steps for each one. Hey, now you're asking, what do I do with it when I'm done? Do I turn in this spreadsheet through Schoology? No, the next step would be to put this into your digital science notebook. So follow these steps. I'm going to open up my, wait, no, that's not the right one. One here. Load up your DSN. You're going to go to, you should have already made at least a quantitative data landing page. If you didn't already, you'll create that. And then I had just, so that I didn't forget, I had typed my comparisons in here before. You don't need that. So I'm going to give you more direction on what I want you to do specifically with this. So I'm going to copy this graph. So I just have it highlighted. It needs to be like outlined in blue. Control C. And then don't put it in the footer, but I'm just in the page here. Click Control V, and it dumps it right there. It may have it look small, so you can enlarge it. Make sure you got to play with it a little bit. I think you're used to this. Make sure that your titles aren't cut off and your axes sides aren't cut off. And I don't want you to just dump them in there and then leave it. What I'm going to have you do is provide a short paragraph below each graph. In that paragraph, I want you to explain to me in a few sentences, should be like a short paragraph, what is your graph showing me? What's the relationship between both your data sets? So that's just my quick and dirty explanation of what I want you to do there. I'll give you more instructions later, but you can kind of get a start on this. So just at this point in time, get both of your graphs in here, publish your page. We have just a couple more things we'll do with this page before we finish up this whole website. Okay, thanks everyone. Let me know if you have questions.